matter what you've done in life and mistakes you've made, that there is a chance for redemption, and there is a chance to find yourself and make the most of the rest of your life.
I'm Billy Hollowell, and welcome to the Sons of Thunder Redemption After Show. I am very excited to be joined by Charlene and Rocky. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Doing great. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on. We are really excited because episodes 1 and 2 of Sons of Thunder Redemption have dropped on Pure Flix, and we've got a lot of questions for you. I have a lot of questions for you both. We're going to talk about faith. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about the series. And I think the first place to go, and I'll start with you, Rocky, what was it that attracted you to this role and this project?
There's a lot of things, first of all. I mean, one, it's such an interesting character. You have a guy here who seemed like he had, everything going for him in life. And then, had some hardship and went down the wrong path, and kind of everything that was going so well for him, he kind of threw it away and made some really bad choices. And then this is about him, a later stage of his life where he's found himself and got back on the right path. But because of those difficult choices he's made, it's not easy, and he has a lot of things that he wants to make amends for and, fix in his life. So, he was so far gone that it wasn't just like a little thing that was like, oh, I'll start making good choices now and everything's easy, So I think it was a really interesting character and just so much to play with there. And that's one of the main things.
Now, in your character's Jacob, and then obviously, Charlene, you play Sandy. And the interesting thing having you both here, there's a history with these characters. And we see in episodes 1 and 2, that history is sort of brought up to the surface. And we'll get into that in a moment. But what was it for you, Charlene, that sort of made you say, yeah, I want to play Sandy?
Well, I think the major theme that she deals with in this series is forgiveness. And having to really confront the hurt feelings that go along with betrayal and things not working out. And I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to and really dive into. And in these first couple episodes anyway, she's certainly dealing more with anger and bitterness and expressing that. And so I thought it was a great, it's like with each character, you have an opportunity to learn things. I think sometimes characters teach you things as you go through their experiences. And within my own life as well, there's things that have been more difficult to forgive. And that's a big theme for her.
Yeah, and it sounds, we learn in episodes 1 and 2 that, Rocky, your character Jacob, kind of does some pretty shady things, right? And Sandy kind of recounts some of those things, and you see a lot of eye rolling from Sandy, kind of, shock that you've shown up on the ranch and you're there. And, I have to tell you the truth, as I watched episodes 1 and 2, I'm thinking, okay, what do I make of Jacob? What do I make of Sandy? Is Sandy going to forgive? There's a lot of questions that are being set up there. And I do think what you just said about forgiveness is really important, because I know for viewers, we all go through this. We have people who have done things to us, and it's really hard to forgive. And you see that in that relationship playing out there, between Jacob and Sandy. Rocky, let me throw this question to you. How do you, and this is almost probably a silly question to both of you because you're professional actors, but for those of us who aren't, how do you muster up the emotion to act out these, and this is such a 30,000 foot question, but I have to ask it, to act out these sorts of emotional scenes when they're not actually things like that you've gone through, maybe these specific scenes? How do you do that?
It depends. I tend to work with imagination, and I like the imagination based for the most part, because I just feel like it's limitless, and that's what I've been drawn to. So, you create that backstory. So much of it was given to us, right? With the backstory by reading the script with, Sandy and Jacob's history, and then, where Jacob was, in prison and got involved in the devil's hand. So you have all these things that were kind of given to, even like his little monologue in the beginning gives you even more. And so, you start with that, and then you just kind of build around that. You start just creating this backstory for him, and you start creating these relationships, and you start kind of reliving these moments that he's experienced. Um, and it's amazing because, like, once you get there, and then you get opposite the other actor who's done their work, and they're emotionally there and available, and you just really it really feeds off of one another. I mean, there's times, if there is something that is so, like, hits home so close to something you've experienced, then I'm not afraid every once in a while use what you call substitution there either, and be like, okay, I'm going to draw from this in my life just because it's so close. I remember exactly how I felt during that time. That was really difficult. So even I can use that as well. But yeah, I feel like you create that backstory, you create those experiences, those moments that you've lived, and then you get in the scene with somebody, and you kind of let it all go, and you just kind of react off of them, and luckily it usually shows up.
Well, it showed up. It showed up for the two of you, Charlene. What would you say? What's your? I'm just curious, like sort of like behind the scenes. What's the method for bringing that emotion out?
Yeah, I would piggyback on what Rocky just said. I think imagination is limitless. And when I studied at Stellar Adler, that was what we learned first, just because when I was approaching all these characters that were going through things that I had no experiences with, it wasn't until I learned the imagination technique that I was able to really dive in and do these moments truthfully. And in this story, it's just going back to the heart of this character, and when she fell in love with Jacob, and when he started doing some things that broke her heart, and really imagining those experiences, and giving myself the time to experience it. And then when you get to set and you're working off the other actor, and you're collaborating with the director, you got to let it all go and trust everybody's process and collaboration to create something new.
Yeah, that's helpful to hear that, because I think for most people, they can't figure out how do these actors get on screen and make something so believable, and your relationship there is really believable. So that brings me to really asking this question of how similar, and I'll start with you, Charlene. How similar is Sandy to you as a person? What are the similarities and the differences as we just get to know her and you a little bit more?
Um, Well, I certainly have experienced some of the struggles that she had with forgiveness, with someone who had, my heart, and wasn't all that gentle with it, but not to the degree where she was, engaged, and the trials of loving someone who had some serious stuff with addiction and gangs and stuff like that. So I had bits and pieces of it already there. And one of the beautiful things in this story, she goes into community working with horses at the Gibson Ranch, and with people who become family to her. And that situation, oddly enough, is something that's so close to me. And I have like surrogate family that was very similar to this. It was really uncanny. So it was really nice to be able to just dive into and know exactly how this feels, and these people who have just taken me in and loved me through as I'm processing my healing.
Yeah, and pulling from that experience again, that kind of piggybacks off of what we were talking about in the previous question. But that's really interesting to me. Those similarities and being able to pull them in. Now, Rocky, what about you for Jacob?
Honestly, I felt there was a lot of things that I could connect with, and that I felt had similar. I grew up playing football. I played football through college. It was a major part of my life. Actually, my first experience acting was in the movie Invincible with Mark Wahlberg. I was one of the football players in that. Got hired as like a special ability extra. And so anyway, yeah, I could definitely connect with that of his past, and being a part of a team, and being something that meant so much to you. And I think that lended itself to why he would look for another group, another like club to be a part of. Once that ends and you're no longer a part of something like that, I think the brotherhood that a biker gang would offer, or that presents, is something that would be appealing, maybe. So that was one thing. I grew up riding motorcycles. I've had a motorcycle license since I was 18, so I've always ridden motorcycles my whole life. So that was another thing. And then I think just like, as far as from the faith aspect, I don't know. Like, I don't know if this is something that's part of this question, or just actually goes back to the previous question you asked about why what drew you to the character, but I think there's just something very interesting and that I identify with, and the idea that you know you make mistakes in your life, right? And you regret those and you feel guilty and things like that. But God doesn't expect you to be perfect. God doesn't expect you to be not make mistakes, and you're a flawed being. So um, I think I can identify with making mistakes in my life and still trying to do the best I can to stay on like a good path and
Yeah.
and redeem yourself and things like that. I think sometimes I have to remind myself of that. Like, okay, I'm not supposed to be perfect. You're not supposed to. You're gonna make mistakes. That's the whole thing. So anyway, all that stuff I felt was very easy to connect with the character.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Right.
there's so much. Were you going to say something, Charlene?
No, I was just listening.
Well, I was gonna toss it to you because I think it's interesting when we talk about new beginnings, which is what you're talking about, Rocky. This idea that when we make mistakes, we could start over. Why do you think it's important, Charlene, that we explore that in movies? We don't always get to see that in films and TV shows. Why is this sort of thing a good thing for us to be showing audiences?
Because it's very relevant to the human experience, to be alive. And as we navigate through life, we could listen to, if we've had great godly examples, we can listen to it all. But like every hero's journey, you have to go away on your own to come back to the authentic truth. And you could only do that through your own experience. And you have to make mistakes along the way. And I think with mistakes, the beauty is, you really can relate to when someone else hurts you. It's like, oh, you've hurt me. Well, I've made this mistake here, and it's important that I forgive you so you don't hold this guilt on your conscience, just as we'll need to be forgiven in some of the things we did intentionally or unintentionally. So I just think it's a relatable human experience, and it speaks to everyone.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think the other part of it that's really interesting to me is this idea of running away. Like a lot of us want to run away from the mistakes we've made. We don't want to confront them, or we want to pretend they didn't happen. And Jacob as a character, it really seems from what we're seeing in the first two episodes, unless something radical is going to change moving forward, I don't know, but it seems like he's really been on confronting. I mean, he goes right to Sandy, confronting those mistakes that he's made, apologizing, making good on it. You know, why is that important in your view, Rocky, that we sort of show that? Because that seems like a really tough thing to do, and Jacob is pretty good at it so far.
Um, I think you look at Jacob's journey. Obviously, he's we're seeing him at a time when he's past the really dark part of his life, right? He's found God and he's feels like he's on the right path, and so I think he feels good about where he's at this point. But I think he looks back at the hurt and the pain that he caused, and that's the biggest thing in his life that he regrets and that he hasn't moved past yet, because he knows, he knows what he did, and he knows he hurt the people closest to him, and that's why I think he goes to find Sandy, because if he can get her to forgive himself, or if he can get her to forgive him, then that kind of like it comes full circle where like he feels like now he's made amends there and he can move forward from this point of his life and kind of a new life.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let me pivot here because I'm actually curious about your own stories too, and I think the audience wants to know who you are and know more about you. Rocky, for you, like, what is it? And I guess I'll ask the question, and it's probably a question that I'm sure you guys hear a lot. And I've interviewed a ton of people, and I hear all different things when I ask this question. But what is it like being a person of faith in Hollywood? What is that experience like for you, Rocky?
Um, I mean, honestly, I couldn't imagine being in this business not being a person of faith. It's a very tough business. It's very competitive. There's a lot of ups and downs career wise, and I think by being someone of faith, you have the bigger picture, that it's not the most important thing. I think when I think of what's most important in my life, acting is several notches down. It's faith and family, and as long as those things are in line, whatever happens career wise, is okay. So that's the first thing that comes to mind when you ask me that. Like I think it's important to know what's most important in your life, and then as far as, other things, there's definitely projects that come along where, I'm just, because of the content or certain things like that, that it's just not something I'm interested in, so, which I'm fine with,
That
I
has to
think,
be hard though. That has to
I
be hard because there
I
are
mean,
moments I'm sure where you're like, I really want to do this project.
I mean, honestly, something came along not that long ago that I was like, my goodness, I would love. It was just an audition. I wasn't like off, but I got the audition. I was like, man, I would like love this character and like do this, but it just wasn't something I wanted, that I was wanting to do, And I think I'm okay with that. The thing that I think I would not be okay with would be to um, make decisions or to give in on some of my, morals and standards and then regret it later on, And I have two little girls. I have a daughter who'll be 5 into this month. I have a daughter who's 3. My wife's pregnant with our third daughter who'll be born in,
Oh,
well, in the next
congratulations.
couple months. They're due early March. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, I just, for me, I want to just, there's an example I want to set. I'm not judging anybody or, saying anybody should do it any different than they want to. But for me, I know I have to be happy with the choices I make. And so my faith definitely comes in that respect as well, with just like some opportunities that come along and things like that. There's times when I'll pass on something or jump at something because I think it's something that, hey, man, this is like, family friendly. And I think my nieces and nephews and my kids will someday be able to watch that. So it plays in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and that's important because for people watching, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's Hollywood or any job that you have, not compromising. If you're going to stick to your faith, believing that there's a plan for you, right? That God has you in his hands. He knows what he's going to do. And it's so easy, though, I would imagine, to get sucked back into, which is why that's a great perspective to have, to get sort of sucked back into, oh no, I'm chasing this dream. I have to go do these things to make the dream happen. And I think the opposite of that is saying, okay, God, where do you want me? Who do you want me to talk to? What do you want me to do today? What do you have for me? That's really what you're speaking about there. And carrying that into Hollywood seems like a tough thing, but it seems like you're doing that. Now, Charlene, what would you say for that?
Well, I came into faith, I got baptized about 6 years ago. So I definitely have a different experience of like before and after. And I would say before really coming into it, my priorities in life were, work hard, and with this business, it was very easy to get consumed by that, especially because there's so much rejection, and you're constantly putting yourself out there and being disappointed, and so that could always just have me on shaky ground or have my value in whether I'm working or not working a lot any given year. And I think once I really, I mean, my journey is very unique in just that I had some experiences that were tangible that really led me to faith. And the priorities really change in that it's my value isn't caught up in whether I'm working or not working. And that is, everything and really beautiful and a change in life. And also it just brought me more joy and happiness. So I'm really
Yeah.
grateful that to have had the before and afters as well, because it's like, being in a desert and then not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you said there were some tangible things. Was there one thing, and I love, and I'll ask you this too, Rocky, because I think it's interesting. I grew up in a Christian home, then I had to kind of own it for myself as
Mhm.
I got older. Once I got through college and made a lot of mistakes and realized, okay, this is not my parents' faith; it has to be my faith, right? And I had to make that decision. But was there one thing for you that really was sort of the deciding final factor?
I was raised in a home where my mother was very religious, always going to church. My dad was had a spiritual connection, but wasn't the most like going to church every Sunday. So it was interesting. Grow up in a home where I had kind of both sides of it. Um, and I mean, I don't know if there was one moment. I will say this: once I had kids, I think that your perspective changes a lot. You
It
know,
does. Yeah.
and I can tell you, like when I was in LA for a long time, I mean, I never, had a crisis of faith or anything like that. But I wasn't like super active, like going to church, every Sunday and, that kind of thing. And I was lucky to have some friends who were very good influences on me in LA, who, I'd go to church with them sometimes. And I knew him before moving to LA. And so I kind of credit him for getting me a little more active. But once I had kids, I think it was even more of like, I needed to, this is the upbringing I want them to have. This is the example I want them to have. I want them to be around it. So they helped me. They helped me become, um, just strengthen my faith and strengthen my commitment, and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, like I said, I don't know if there's one moment, but that's definitely like one of the factors that really played a big role for me.
Yeah. Well, it's scary when you start to realize that you're shaping somebody else's, multiple people's worldview, like that you are responsible for how they end up in so many ways, right? I mean, that is something that can definitely make that happen. And I know for you, Charlene, you were saying you had a series of things that were really tangible. Was there sort of a final moment for you in that journey of, because I do find it compelling that, it was kind of in the middle of your career. 6 years ago, you get baptized. What was that moment, or what were those moments that led you up to it?
Well, there were a series of things that happened. One, my mother passed. So I was dealing with a lot of grief and also going through a difficult breakup, and I just kind of felt like I was on my knees and not knowing how to, like, I was doing life the best way I could. And as far as I felt, I was making very good choices. I was working hard. I was staying away from drugs and like all the obvious things. And yet I was still feeling sort of empty. And it was going through the grief and disappointment. And also, even with the career, it was like I would get certain levels of status, but it didn't, although it gave me a little hits of excitement as, you booked a job, it wasn't everlasting. It was like a little bit of a roller coaster. So I just felt sort of desperate. And I had some, tangible experiences, which with what I would call the Holy Spirit, that was just full of grace and peace and love and warmth. And not that I had ever questioned there being a God, but it was in that moment that it was undeniable to me, and that I wanted to push into that more. And so that's sort of my journey.
No, that's amazing. And I think so many people relate to that, right? There's so many different journeys that lead people to faith. And I appreciate you both sharing that. Now, as we round out to the end of the discussion, it's been really fun. We've gotten to talk about the first two episodes, about the show, about your characters, about who you guys are, your journeys of faith. But I want to just ask you both, as people who helped bring this story alive in Sons of Thunder Redemption. I'll start with you, Rocky. What are you hoping the audience takes away at the end of this series when they're done watching the episodes? What do you want them thinking and feeling?
Well, one, one of the reasons I wanted to be an actor was that I know how I feel when I watch a movie or a television show and get caught up in it and experience what the characters are going through, right? And I think that's the whole point, right? When you're watching something, you want to like connect to them emotionally and experience their journey, right? Um, so I always think about like one of the things, like I said, that drew me to acting was that you could possibly be the best part of someone's day. So that's one thing for me is that people come home from work and they put this on and they can you know jump into this story with us and experience what we're experiencing and give them a good feeling. And as far as like the specific feeling and what we're I think, or I should say I hope that by the end of this they one that they've enjoyed watching these characters for the past 6 episodes, and that I guess specifically like thinking about my characters, no matter what you've done in life and mistakes you've made, that there is a chance for redemption, and there is a chance to find yourself and make the most of the rest of your life, and not live in the past, not dwell on the things you've done wrong, and I think that's something we all have to remind ourselves of. I think I mentioned something like this earlier, just that, you're going to make mistakes. You're not expected to be perfect and to be, we're flawed individuals. We're human, we're humans, right? And so, as far as for my kid, I hope they look at that and they say, it just gives them some self-reflection of like, no matter what I've done, it's okay. And there's light at the end of the tunnel.
That's a good word. And what would you say, Charlene?
I think hope and community, and that there's real life in forgiveness and real joy there.
That's incredibly important. I think that's the core of all of it. And I really just want to thank you both for coming on today. And everybody watching, make sure you head over to Pure Flix, watch Sons of Thunder Redemption. If you don't have a trial or a membership, you can head over and get a trial right now at Pure Flix. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.